Hi guys, thank you for joining me today. We will continue our construction networks. So for construction planning and scheduling course. Previously, we discussed different planning techniques. I covered bar chart. I covered network models activity on arrow. This is bar chart. This is activity on arrows. Today we will go through another example of network models, which is called activity on nodes. This is the final product for activity on node. Keep in your mind, AON network is represented by every activity is presented with a rectangle. We are going to draw a rectangle like this one, and each rectangle will be divided to different parts. So I will put here the name of the activity. I will put here description, short description for the activity. I will put here the duration for this activity. Later, we are going to use this one and this one and this one and this one for early start, early finish, late start, late finish, but will be covered in the scheduling part. But right now, every activity is presented with a rectangle. I can write the symbol for this activity, short description for this activity, and what is the duration of this activity. I'm gonna start from left to right. So your network will be started from left. This is the start of the project and will be ended to the right, which is the end of the project. Dependency between activities is presented by lines. So I'm gonna draw lines to explain or to describe the dependency, the sequence of these activities, which one will be first and which one will be the second. Every activity in the network has to be preceded by another activity. We should have a predecessors, or your activity will be the start of the project. Every activity must be followed, which is the successors, or the last activity will be the final or the finish of the project. Every path must be continuous from the project start to the project end. No gaps are allowed. Keep in your mind, in this network, we have activity relationships. We covered this before, but in this network, we will have something a little bit different. The most common relationship between activities is called finish to start, FS. What you mean? I will represent it like this. This is activity A, as I mentioned, represented by a rectangle. I put here the name of the activity A. I put here just a short description for this activity. I put here the duration of this activity. We have another activity called C. I will put it in another rectangle. Short description. This is the duration. The relationship between these two activities is called finish to start. What you mean by finish to start? This is the finish of activity A. And this is the start of activity A. This is the start of activity C. This is the finish of activity C. So the relationship is finish to start, finish of activity A, and the start of activity C. That makes sense? So just to keep in your mind, this phase represents the start of activity A. This phase, the end of activity A. This phase, the start of activity C. This phase is the end of activity or the finish of activity C. So finish to start means finish of activity A, start of activity C. We have another relationship in this network activity on node, which is called finish to finish, FF. FF means the finish of activity A means the finish of activity C. I don't care when activity A will start, and I don't care when activity C will start. There is no relationship between the start of A and the start of C, but we have a relationship called finish to finish. Finish of activity A must be done at the same time of finish of activity C. So I will draw an arrow finish of activity A to the finish of activity C. We have another relationship which is called start to start, SS, start to start. So the start of activity A at the same time for the start of activity C. Please forget this number right now. Does that make sense? So start of activity A at this phase means the start of activity C. So I will start both activities at the same time. So the start of the second activity depends on the start of the first activity. I cannot start C until you start A. We have another relationship which is called start to finish. Start to finish. So start of activity B means finish of activity C. This is finish, this is a start. So the relationship between B and C is start to finish, SF. SF means start to finish, start to finish. So the start of the second activity depends on the finish of the first activity. So start of B means finish of C. We have some examples and I will go through them. So in this project, we have around activities, around 10 or 9 activities, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and we are given the duration of each activity. So far, the duration is not an important information because we are not creating scheduling for the project. We just planning. And what is the predecessors? The predecessors. So let's start. We have activity A, activity B without any predecessors. So I will start here with 2 activities. A and B. So each one will be represented by a rectangle divided by this. The first one will be labeled A with a duration equal for A 3. We have B with a duration equal 4. We don't have any predecessors, so I can say this is the start of the project. So I will start the project with these 2 activities, A and B. Does that make sense? So A and B without any predecessors. C and D has predecessors A. So C and D. So I will construct activity C. And activity, this is C, and activity D. So I will label this one as C with a duration 2 and D with a duration 3. Just to make sure, C is 2 and D is 3. Both of them, C and D, has predecessors A. So I cannot start C or D until you finish A. So I will draw arrow like this and another arrow like this. That means I have to finish A to start C and D. And the relationship is not given, so the common relationship finish to start. Finish to start. This is for B and C. For C and D. Let's continue for E. E and F has a predecessor B and C. So I will construct E and F. I will construct E here and F. Just rearrange your rectangles to make sure you put your activities in the right spot. So I have activity E with a duration 4. So I will put E here with duration 4 and the activity F with a duration 2. So what is the relationship? The predecessor for E is B and C. Here is B and here is C. That makes sense? So the predecessor for E is B and C. Also, the predecessor for F is B and C. For F, we have B and C. That makes sense? So make sure the arrow is coming from the end, the finish of C to the start of F, from the finish of B to the start of F. So the next is activity G. I will construct G with a predecessor D and E. So I will put here G. The duration of G is 5. This is G, and the duration is 5. The predecessor for G, D, and E. So this is D and E. Here is D and E. Okay. For H, we have H has a predecessor D and E. So I will put here H. So H with a duration 4. And the predecessor for H is D and E. So this is E, and I can draw D here. That's fine. Make sure the finish of D means the start of H, the finish of E means the start of H. We have I has a predecessor F. We have I can put it here. So I with a duration equal to has a predecessor F. So I will put relationship here, F. Keep in your mind, we have to finish the project with one node. So looks like activities G, H, I are the last activities. We don't have any following activities. So I will construct a node here, representing the finish of the project. And every last activity will be ended by this node. So I started with one node. So I will start with activities A and B, and then I will finish the project with activities G, H, I with one finish node. This network is called activity on node. That makes sense? We have another example here. We are given some activities A, B, C, D until H, and what is the short description for each activity, and what is the preceding activity, the previous activity, the predecessors. And we need to start to construct the activity on node network. So I will start, looks like the first activity A without any predecessor. So I can start my activity here, my project, with activity E. The duration is not given, that's fine. So this is activity E. without any predecessor. So this is the start of the project. Then I have activity B, C with predecessor A. So B has a predecessor A, C has a predecessor A. So I will put here B and I will put C. So this is B and this is C. We have a relationship finish to start. So the finish of A means the start of B. The finish of A means the start of C. That makes sense? Then after B and C, we have D has a predecessor B. So we have D has a predecessor B. So I will put here D. This is activity D has a predecessor B. So the finish of B means the start of D. That makes sense? So the predecessor for D is B. I will construct E. The predecessor for E is C. F, C. So E and F has a predecessor C. So I will put here E and F. Here is E and F. E and F, both of them has predecessor C. So the finish of C means the start of E. The finish of C means the start of F. That makes sense? So this is for E and F. For G, we have a predecessor D. So for G, we have a predecessor D. So I will put here G. And this G has a predecessor D. The last one is activity H has a predecessor E, F, and G. So E, F, and G. So I will have the last one, which is called H. So I will put it here. This is H, activity H. The predecessor for this activity is E, F, and G. These are the predecessors. So I have to finish E, F, G. I have to finish E, F, G to start activity H. So looks like the project started with activity A and finished with activity H. We must have one activity at the beginning and one activity at the end. That's fine. If we don't, if we have many activities at the beginning, we have to construct a node like we did in the previous example. Looks like we have two activities we can start the project with. So I constructed a node represents the start of the project. The last activities are three activities. So I have to construct another node to represent the finish of the project. But in this example, we have only one activity at the beginning, one activity at the end. That's fine. Okay. One more example. We have 10 activities, A, B, C, D until J. And the duration of each activity is given, and the predecessors for each activity, the successors for each activity are given. So let's start to construct this network activity on here. So looks like I will start with activity A. Activity A has no predecessor. Activity B also no predecessor, but activity A has a successor CDE. Activity B has a successor H. So I will start with A and B. So A will be constructed here. This is A with a duration equal 5. This A has three successors, C, D, E. So I will construct here 1, 2, 3. C, D, E. C, D, E. The duration of C is 3. The duration of D is 4. The duration of E is 3. All of them are following for activity A. So I have to put the relationship finish to start. This is for activity A without any predecessor, nothing before, but we have 3 activities after. For B, we don't have any predecessor, but we have one following H. So I will construct here B. Activity B has a duration equal 3, and the successor activity is H with a duration equal 3. So the finish of B means the start of H. Keep in your mind, I will start the project with 2 activities, A and B. So I will construct here one node, which represents the start of the project to start this activity and this activity. That makes sense? This is for A and B. A and B without any predecessor, but we have successors. For C, we have a previous A, that's fine, and the following is F. So I need to construct here an activity F after C. This is activity F with a duration equal 5, and the predecessor is C. That makes sense? For D, the predecessor is A, that's fine. But the following or the successor is G, and we are given here FF. The relationship is FF. So I will put here G. Be careful about this relationship. If nothing is given, it will be finished to start, which is a norm. But for G, has a predecessor D. This is G with a duration equal 4. And the relationship between D and G finish to finish. So be careful about this one. So the finish of D means the finish of G. That makes sense? The next one is E. The predecessor is A, that's fine. The successor is H. So after E, we have H. Looks good. So I can construct here this relationship between E and H. This is the reason why I moved the H a little bit forward. So after E, we have H. For F, we have the following, or the successor is J. So I have to construct here activity J with a duration equal 2. And after F, I have to start G. After G, I have to start G. After G, I have to start G. This is the predecessor, the successor, I'm sorry. After H, I have to start I. After H, I have to construct here an activity I with a duration equal 3. So after H, here is I. After I, we have J. After I, we have J. So looks like we should push J a little bit here with a duration 2. So I can finish I and then start J. Does that make sense? So after I have to start J. And the J looks like is the last one without any successor, and the previous or the predecessor are F, G, and I. We have F, G, and I. Looks good. So I will start the project with two activities. So I constructed this node, and I will finish the project with one activity, which is called J. This network is called activity on node. One more example, which is the last example. We are given these activities A, B, C, D, and the duration of each activity, and what is the following activity. So, and I would like to construct the activity on node network. So let's start with activity A, and it looks like the duration is 3, and we have 3 activities are following. So I will start with activity A. With a duration equal 3. And we have 3 following activities. So I will put them here, 1, 2, and 3. The first activity will be B, D, and E. The duration of each activity for B is 4, for D is 2, and for E is 3. Be careful. This is B, has a duration 4. This is D, has a duration 2. This is E, has a duration 3. The next activity, make sure you put your relationship. So after A, I will start B. After A, I will start D. After A, I can start E. So far, so good. The next activity is B. Has a following activity C. So after B, I can construct here C, activity C. So activity C with a duration equal 4, I have to finish B to start C. For activity C, we have a following I. So after C, I can put I. With a duration equal 5. So after you finish C, I can start I. Okay. For D, with the duration 2, we have the following is F. So after D, I can put F here. F has a duration equal 3. So after I put F with a duration equal 3, make sure the following for F is H. So after F, we have to put H. So after F, I can put H here with a duration equal 4. And the predecessor is F, and the following for F is H. So this is for F. For G, we have a following I. So here is, where is G? I did not put G yet, but G is the following for E. So after E, I have to put G here. After E, this is G with a duration equal 4. So this is the following for E. And the following for G is I. The following for G is I. So I can put I here like this. For H, we don't have any following. For K, we don't have any following. For I, we have a following K. So after I, we have here K with the duration equal 6, and the K is the following for I. So after I, we have K. For H, we don't have any following. For K, we don't have any following. So it looks like H and K are the end. So I can put here a node called N for H and for K and H. So H and K are the last two activities in the project. A is the first activity of the project. This is called activity on node network. So make sure when you are drawing your network, I have to respect. If you put your activity, you have to put the following activities. And if there is something else is given, so the normal or the common relationship between one activity and the following activity is finished to start, FS. So make sure which activity you put. We have following, we have following, we have following, we have to respect. Sometimes we have activity without any following. Looks like these are the last activities in the project, which is H and K. Since we have last two activities, we have to put a node to represent the end or the finish of the project.